Hey friends, Heather here. Welcome back to the Build a Better Business video series. If you're new and you have just discovered these videos, I want to give you a special welcome. It is so great to have you. I hope you find these videos helpful. There is a new one out every week on topics to help you build the business of your dreams. If you did miss any, you can just jump onto YouTube on our YouTube channel and check out all the previous episodes to get all caught up. Just pop over to the Build a Better Business channel and have a look around. So on to today's episode, number 4, but who's counting? So before I start this week's episode, I want to ask you a question. Are you a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of person? Do you like to get in there and just do things, try them out for yourself? Did you prepare your own financial statements? Maybe you want to have a go at your own tax return this year. Or maybe you have a bookkeeper who prepared your year-end financials, but you're feeling a little saucy and you want to try out doing your own taxes? Well, if that's you, then this episode is for you. Now, hold on. Before you click off and head out to watch the latest never-ending stream of TikTok videos, just wait. Now, by the way, those TikTok videos are stealing your life away. Get off of there. Anyways, I want to start out by saying that even if you don't want to complete your taxes yourself, you might still want to watch this video. I'm going to look into some of the programs that are out there, and you might decide you want to try it out. It doesn't mean you have to submit what you try out to the government. Anything you enter will just sit in the program until you click send, but you can see it as more of a test run. And I actually do this all of the time. I'll put into my tax software what I think is going to happen with my year, and I'll kind of go in a few times, just changing different scenarios to see what my taxes might be like, and you could try that out for yourself. It helps make me feel like I've got some advanced warning on what my year-end tax bill is going to look like in case I need to make any modifications. Also, if you just use it as a testing ground, then you could use that information that you garner from that to compare against what a tax preparer might give you if you're using one. And it'll give you some knowledge, maybe to give you the chance to ask some questions and get a better understanding of your business if you're talking to a tax preparer or an accountant. And I am a huge proponent of understanding what's going on in the back end of what's happening in your business, since this is a huge source of underutilized information, and you can then use that to help your business grow, right? Okay, so tax returns. So the programs I'm going to take a look at are going to be for filing your personal income tax returns. So if you run a small business as a sole proprietor, maybe you're a contractor, if you're in a partnership, then this one is for you. If you're incorporated, your business is going to have to file a corporate tax return, and I highly recommend that you get yourself an accountant for this, if you haven't already. The corporate tax returns are just a little more involved than a personal tax return, and you really want to make sure you get all that information right. Okay, so if you recall, episode 1, where we talked about tax filing deadlines, you will remember, of course, that small businesses have until the 15th of June to file their taxes. But you have to pay them by April the 30th, so you might want to have them prepared in advance. If you watched episode 3, I covered a whole pile of expenses that might be applicable when you're preparing your year-end financials and your tax return, right? So before I get into the tax programs themselves, I wanted to add another thought that I didn't mention in episode 3. So this is not another deduction for your business taxes, but it is something that you might potentially want to include on your personal tax return. So this expense is medical expenses. The thing about medical expenses is that some people don't realize they don't have to all be paid in the fiscal year that you are reporting. So fiscal year is just a fancy way of saying the period of time that the accounting period covers. So for personal tax returns, it's January to December. For personal taxes, your fiscal year is January to December. But your medical expenses could cover, say, September to September, maybe June to June, maybe even February to February. It just has to be 12 consecutive months, and the last month has to end sometime in the year the tax return is for. So this can be useful if you had a whole bunch of expenses that kind of overlapped a year, say 2018, November 2018 to February 2019, and you happen to be preparing your 2019 return. So if you had to cut it off in December, maybe those 2 months expenses didn't have enough to impact your last year's, your 2018 return. But if you took March 1st, 2018 to February, the end of February 2019, that's 12 consecutive months. Maybe when those two stub periods are added together, that you've got a big enough medical expense that will impact your return, right? Lower your taxes. So what can be included in medical expenses are things like dentists, medical devices if you need any, hearing aids, laser eye surgery, I could use some of that. Prescription drugs, if it's not covered by a health plan. There's actually a really long list. And it will let you know on the list if one, is it eligible? Do you need a prescription to be able to claim it? And some items require a special certification, a special tax form. So it'll give you that information for each item. And I'll include a link in the comments below, in the comment section of the video, to the CRA website, so you can just have a look through the list. You may be surprised by all the things that are actually allowed to be deducted as medical expenses. Now, how much medical expenses claimed will impact your actual taxes depends on your taxable income for the year, but you don't know unless you add it up and see, right? Right. So, onto tax software. I'm not going to cover them all. There's too many, and they're not very interesting. You'd fall asleep, and I'd just lose you entirely. But I'm going to cover 3. So the first thing that I think you need to consider when you're deciding on your tax program is, what do you want it to be able to do? If you've never done your own taxes, maybe you don't know what you want it to be able to do. That's okay. I got you covered here. So I'm going to let you know what I look for in tax software and why. And then I'm going to take you through a few programs to see if they fit my criteria. And then, of course, I'll let you know what I'm using. I've been using it for several years. It's pretty awesome. So the first thing that I look for, obviously, this is your tax return. Whatever software you use, you want to make sure it's secure. I want to make sure they use encryption. Do they have password recovery? That kind of thing. So there's not many softwares right now that don't have encryption, but this is some of your most sensitive information, and you want to make sure that it's safe out there in the whole land of the dark web and all that. I don't know what the dark web is, but someone tried to scare me with it the other day with the marketing thing. I want to make sure that all my data is encrypted, so it makes it harder to steal. Also, I mentioned password recovery, but not likely in the way that you would normally think. I actually do not want to be able to perform password recovery. I think password recovery could make my information less secure, since all it would take is a quick email and a new password comes and then you're in. If someone hacked my email, I'm not positive that they couldn't get at my tax returns this way. Maybe they're not interested, but I'm just saying. There's no way to recover my password, and the data is encrypted, then I'm pretty sure that nobody else can get at it, right? Now, side note, don't ever forget your password, because you won't be able to recover it. I did this once, and I had to go back and retype everything because I just could not remember my password. It happens. Another thing I look for is, I want to be able to file my taxes online. It's a little file called NetFile. Now, most programs do this. I don't know of any that aren't doing it these days, but it's always worth double checking before you put lots of effort in. If you want to file your tax return online, just make sure that they have that ability. And it just means that they've set up the ability to transfer all of your data automatically to the government website. I'm happy to report that the government websites are finally entering the 20th century and catching up with the rest of us. And you can actually access most of the things you need now online for the government website. So the next major feature I look for, and this one is also associated with connecting to the government website, I want to be able to connect with the CRA website and download all of my slips automatically. So these are things like T4s if you had employment income, T4As if you were a contractor, you probably got a T4A. The other slips are things like T5s, which are for interest and dividend income. If you had tuition, education slips, basically any of those official slips that come, that you have to include in your tax return. So I look for this feature because it saves me time. At some point at the beginning of March, I know that all slips are going to have been filed with the government, since they're all due to the government by the end of February. If you remember episode 1, everybody has the same deadlines. So to save me all that time of typing it in, all I have to do is go into my tax software, log into my government account, and then it automatically populates all the boxes for all of the slips. No keying in. It's all just in there like magic in the right places. Now, a caution here, after you download, before you file, go through and just double check against the actual slip. Just check what loaded and that everything is there. I say this partly because I once accidentally downloaded all of my slips twice, and I thought my taxes looked a bit funny, and I went through for my double check, and thank goodness I noticed it before I filed. So just double check everything before you file. The next thing I really like, and this might be important to you if you plan to do your own taxes, I also look for a program that stores previous returns. So the program that I use right now has, I think, 7 years of returns backlogged, and this can make it helpful for things like carry forwards if I want to look back at something, but also for carry forwards like loss carry forwards, RSP, donations. If you didn't have enough to claim donations, it'll just carry those forward until a year you can use them. And I love that feature because then I don't have to keep track of it for myself, right? It's in there, it's already in the right place. And if it keeps track of all that for you, it just saves you that step. I like to save steps. Also, the program will autofill all of my personal data for me. Name, address, children, spouses, birthdays, all those things. The less I have to key in, the better. Now, if you do have a spouse or children, you really should, don't even consider not doing them all at once. Do them all at once. Your spouse's income is cross-reported, and that can on your return, and that can affect deductions. Some incentive programs are only claimed by one spouse, so you need to decide which one to put it on, and you don't want to accidentally put it on both. If you have children, maybe they have education deductions. So if you do their tax return, then you can figure out if you want to, you or your spouse wants to claim any excess on your return. Just makes it easier. Another feature of doing the whole family at once is it can optimize deductions between spouses to get the lowest taxes. So for instance, if one of you did make a lot of deductions but has the lower taxable income and the other person has a higher income, the tax software will just do this magic calculation and decide net for the family unit where would be the most benefit of claiming those deductions to make the family unit's tax burden lower. So yeah, things like medical expenses, donations, these are things that can get moved around to take the most advantage so that you pay the lowest tax rate. You can always decide to leave it where it is if you want, if there's some reason you want to leave it, but the program is great programs are great if they can make those suggestions for you. And also many programs will let you know what the effect of contributing to an RSP will do for you. So the RSP contribution deadline this year is March 2nd. And if you want to apply to your 2019, that's if you want to apply to your 2019 taxes. So I don't always get to this feature in time because I don't have all of my slips until the 2nd of March. So I don't have that complete picture of my tax situation. And now I could estimate what my slips were going to be and ballpark my income. Sometimes I just don't get to it before the contribution deadline. So I just contribute as I need to and worry about the tax impact later. But if you do decide you want to know, the tax software will give you this if-then scenario. You know, if I put in this much, how would it change my taxes? If I put in $1,000, my taxes will change by this much. And some might even recommend how much they think you're going to put in, right, to get your lowest tax amount. So those are the main things that I look for in tax software. Like I mentioned, there's lots of software out there. I'm just going to cover three of the bigger ones. And then you can always check them out to see which one feels like the best fit for you. When you're looking at tax software, ignore the claims of the biggest refund. The refund is a product of each person's situation, not the software. You owe the government, and there isn't some magic inside of a tax program that's going to get you a refund. It's all marketing. All taxes have to follow the same rules. Check episode 3. Whichever one you choose, this is true of every piece of software, they're all going to have their own way of doing things. So it's going to take a little bit of time to learn it. Try not to get frustrated. Just take some breaths. You'll get it. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is ufile. It's been around for a lot of years. I used to use it back in the day when you had to buy software on like a DVD. I might have even bought it on a floppy disk and load it on. Can you imagine? And load it onto your computer. It's pretty convenient now that everything doesn't have to be resident on your device. Let's be serious. So ufile allows you to set up an ID, enter all of your information, calculate taxes. You don't have to pay until you want to file the return. So if you don't want to file the return, you don't have to pay. It's a nice feature if you just want to test out scenarios, right? So once you log in, you set up an ID, it'll take you through fill in the blanks. Because I've used this program in the past, I find it okay to use, but I don't think it's that easy for your average user. I could be wrong. The user interface I find a bit clunky, and I think it would be easy to get confused and frustrated with this one. I used this new interface a few years ago to prepare some corporate tax returns. It looks pretty much the same, and I can recall being kind of annoyed and cranky, and I kind of knew what I was doing, so just be forewarned. Now, ufile does have everything you need. You can direct download from CRA, the data is encrypted, you can file online. Now, you can recover your password via email, which I don't like, but this may not matter to you. It's just one of those things. I might be just too paranoid. Also, I could not find what the actual cost was of ufile. If you decide to complete the return and file yourself, I guess it gives you the bill at the end. The most I could figure out was that prices start at $19.99. I assume that means that as you need more specialized content, the price goes up. TurboTax is another one. It's owned by Intuit, who also just happens to own QuickBooks accounting software. So TurboTax is another software where you don't have to pay until you want to file. So you can use that one again to test out scenarios. It also has the username recovery feature, username and password recovery feature. Again, that might not matter to you. I just mention it here just in case. Now, really, in reality, I guess banks are doing it now, but it's just my thing. So TurboTax also has a nice little feature where you can just click a few boxes, little descriptions of your business or what you need, and it will recommend the package that it thinks is best for you. Now, its base return is also $19.99, similar to ufile. So I assume the prices are probably similar between the two programs. The price of TurboTax is $45 per return if you're using the self-employed feature. And this is before you employ any experts, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, this isn't really that bad a price in the grand scheme of things, $45 per return. The expertise feature is interesting. It's an interesting add-on from ufile. You can pay a little extra on top of the return to have an expert assist you, or a little extra on top of the extra to have an expert assist you and review your taxes for you. Kind of cool. Once you set up an ID, the software takes you through this nice interview, asking you questions to get your personal data all populated and all set up for you. It even has a little button at the top to ask for tax advice if you ever need it. Now, one thing I found kind of annoying about this program was it wouldn't let me skip around without entering all of my data. So this is likely to just stop people from forgetting to put anything in before they file. But if you just want to mess around with the software, and that's all I wanted to do, it slowed me down and it was bugging me. It was just a thing. Now, it was fairly simple to use, and it might be a great option if you want to have a hand at doing your own taxes and still having the option of calling on an expert if you need them. You may find this easier than going to an offsite tax prep company as well. I would do a bit of investigating reviews online, as well as cost differences between using the TurboTax with the expert and then your live in-person tax expert that you see in the standalone businesses before I decided. Just I'd like to know what people's thoughts are and what the prices are. The final program I'm going to talk about is one that I've actually been using for quite a number of years. I think I'm at 9 years or something. And big surprise, it fits all of my parameters. So it's called simpletax. It does not have the password reset. They will email you a hint that you left for yourself, a little breadcrumb you left yourself if you lose your password. Just make sure the hint actually makes sense. One of the times I locked myself out of my tax program because I lost all my passwords and I gave myself a hint. It was not the greatest hint and I couldn't remember. I guess I was just feeling cheeky that day. The good news is I did remember it eventually, but my thing did not help me. The interface in simpletax, I really like. It's clean. It's just so nice to fill in. I actually enjoy filling in stuff on simpletax. It's such a nice interface. It lets you skip around. It has the autofill, which I love. I can move from place to place. If I don't want to do that right now, I can come back to that later. There's a box when you get past your personal information that asks what you want to add to your return. And you might think, well, I don't want to, I don't know. So you can start to just type in, say business, and it'll give you some options with a description. And you're like, oh, that's what I need right there. So they try to make that easy. And if you still can't figure it out, there's a button that says they'll ask you some questions. So they'll ask you some questions and they'll give you suggestions. If you've used the software previously, remember it's got all that stuff from last year already populated. Of course, it might already filled out, right? You want it already filled out. As I mentioned earlier, do your spouse at the same time. This is true for all the programs. It'll link them together and the data gets shared. When you get down to the bottom of SimpleTax, there's a button called Check and Optimize, and it will go through your whole return and give you suggestions for items you maybe are eligible for that you haven't claimed based on what it's seen on your return or past returns. It'll give you that RRSP slider. It'll show you how much your return will change if you do this RRSP. It also gives you warnings on things that might potentially be errors. They may not be. You could just skip them if they're fine. And of course, it'll give you straight up errors if there are any. Then when you scroll down further, it gives you a nice little simple summary of optimizations that it implemented, and then how the tax breaks down between the two, if there's two of you, you and your partner. And some people like this. If you like those old official looking tax forms that I used to get at the post office, there's a button there. You can look at the official tax forms as well, the way they're populated. Now, the very, very, very bottom, there's the submit button, and that will not work unless you've cleared all of your errors. There's no errors, it's happy, and it will submit it. And then it'll also ask you if you want to file your spouse's return if there is one. You don't have to do it right then, but don't forget to do it. After all that filing is done, it asks you for payment. But this program is different because it's free. Yes, I said free. It is free. I have to say, it's the best tax program I've ever used, and it's free. They ask you to contribute, and they put up pictures of the team who all look like super nice people. How could you not want to pay for it? You don't have to, though. Your taxes are filed. They're gone. Then they ask for payment. Now, I have to say, I always pay. I wouldn't want to work really hard for someone, help them out, get to the end, and, I want some kind of exchange for that energetic transaction. I pay what the going rate is because I really like their program, and I want them to keep making it available, and I know that they're providing this great service, and I want to support them. So there you have it, Tax Software 101. I've covered some things to consider before you choose, and the 3 of the well-known programs out there. I recommend go out and try them out. What could go wrong, right? You don't have to file it. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give me a comment in the comments box. Give me a share, give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any episodes. If you missed the free tax checklist from episode 1, I'll include that link below as well, and you can go ahead and grab that. I'll include the links for the 3 tax softwares that I talked about in case you can't find them. And get ready for next week's episode, which will be out on Monday next week. As always, I love hearing your ideas, questions, comments. Make sure to drop me a line. So until next week, my friends, I am Heather. My business is Prosperity Flow Coaching, and I'm working to help people who help people. Have a great week.